The PlayStation 2 was home to some incredible RPGs, from Final Fantasy X to Persona 4 to name a couple, but some lesser known and underrated RPGs went by largely unnoticed. Today we're going to be checking some of those ones out. Let's take a look. Gladius is a strategic RPG that places you in the boots of one of the game's two main characters. Each of them have been affected by a great war that has seen their forces absolutely decimated. Because of this, they return with the intention of rebuilding them and challenging rival institutions in a bid to rebuild their former glory. Now, battles in Gladius take place much in the same fashion as they do in most other strategic RPGs. You select your fighters, choose where they are placed on the battlefield, and use planning and placement to win battles. But there is one key aspect that makes the experience stand out, and that is something known as the swing meter. If you attack too early, your attack will deliver the basic amount of damage, but if you attack at just the right time, when the cursor is in the thin red line, you will do the maximum amount of damage. It's a nice little inclusion that manages to make each and every encounter, no matter how small or big, all the more engaging. All in all, Gladius is a great RPG that is sure to satisfy fans of the genre as well as newcomers alike. Tale of the Forsaken Land is a spin-off of the long-running Wizard series that sees players creating a character and taking off into the kingdom of Duhan. However, all was left in ruins after a sudden flash struck from the heavens and took thousands of people's lives. A maze was revealed underneath the castle that holds a secret treasure. And this is where the gameplay begins. It all takes place from a first-person perspective and allows the player to choose from a wide range of classes such as a warrior, sorcerer or samurai, which all offer their distinct advantages both in and out of combat. Enemies present themselves very much like the Dragon Warrior games of old, with a turn-based system taking the center stage. One aspect of your party that plays a huge role in the game is the concept of trust. If they don't trust you enough, you'll find them not listening to your commands, but if they do, it comes with all sorts of benefits, from increased damage to learning new skills. If you can look past the rather antiquated nature of the game's setup, Wizardry Tale of the Forsaken Land is well worth giving a go. Evergrace is an action RPG developed by From Software and sees you assuming the role of two separate characters, the first being a sword fighter and the second known as Charlene, who can both be swapped out at specific points in the adventure. Naturally, each of them bring their own uses both in and outside of battle. Instead of the characters developing through a traditional leveling up system, it is instead their gear that improves over the course of the game, may that be weapons such as swords or defensive items like helmets, and because of this a lot of time is spent searching the environment for new items to find, which may have the potential to become a chore to some that play it. Combat wise, the action plays out in real time, with each of your weapons being subject to a durability rating. Thankfully, there are spots in the game where you can repair any damage inflicted upon each weapon, which is essential to developing them over the course of the adventure. If you can look past some of Evergrace's shortcomings, it soon becomes a worthwhile journey that definitely deserves a playthrough. Eternal Poison is an SRPG which is set in a dark European location known as the Kingdom of Valdir. Gameplay wise, Eternal Poison shares a lot in common with the likes of Vandal Hearts and borrows some elements from both Pokemon and Fire Emblem as well to create something unique. Battles play out on a grid with both the player and enemy taking turns to move about and deal out attacks. As you would expect, a huge variety of units are available to the player, ranging from archers and mages to infantry and knights. Each has their own distinct role to play on the field of battle, and getting to grips with the various advantages of each is a good idea in order to overcome some of the more challenging situations that you'll find yourself presented with, although it won't be to everyone's tastes. Eternal Poison is a solid RPG that deserves a look if you're a fan of the various other SRPGs that released for the system, such as Sudoken or Disgaea. Metal Saga is a no-nonsense, no-frills RPG that sees players taking on the role of a group of like-minded heroes as they set out into a post-apocalyptic world. Upon its release, it was subject to a number of negative reviews that lambasted its rather archaic approach to RPGs. It's primarily a game about exploration. Naturally, the further you explore, the more dangerous and challenging enemies become. Therefore, focusing upon building up your team is key to success, and this is quite easily one of the most pleasant parts of the experience. combat plays out in a turn-based manner, with each character calling upon a pool of abilities to utilize against enemies, primarily through the use of tanks and often canine companions with rocket launchers strapped to their back. An innate and often hilarious sense of humor permeates the entire experience, from enemies wearing stockings and having machine guns for heads, to bodybuilding monstrosities that try to stop you in your tracks. It's all bound to grab a few laughs as you play through it, which gives Metal Saga a real enjoyable quality that most will find either charming or downright annoying. In my opinion, it's a great RPG though, that well and truly deserves a look. Dark Chronicle is the sequel to Dark Cloud, which in itself was a truly respectable RPG, but its sequel manages to build upon and surpass everything that the original introduced. As the player, you take on the role of two new heroes named Max and Monica, and set out on a time-bending adventure to ultimately restore the future of the world from a threat situated in the past. It all sounds quite confusing at first, but the way the narrative unfolds, it does so in a way that is easy to follow and appreciate. Gameplay-wise, it is an action RPG at heart, which sees battles playing out in real time, with a more hack and slash approach to its combat. Just like the original, weapons are once again the focal point of progression, with the player having the ability to level them up and attach items that further enhance their proficiency. One aspect of the adventure that really stands out though is having the choice to recruit various NPCs to your cause, with each of them having different uses, ranging from making bread to gathering extra items and providing support in battle. It's a really neat addition that adds a lot to the overall adventure and ties in perfectly with something known as the Georama system that presents itself as a sort of city building minigame which is used to rebuild the world. Any NPCs that you acquire can be moved into the villages that you create, making the process of recruiting them all the more meaningful. If you haven't got around to playing it yet, Dark Chronicle is well worth a go. Legend of Legaia was one hell of an RPG on the original PlayStation, but its sequel Dual Saga never really received the attention that it deserved. This time around we are introduced to an outcast known as Lang, who has been shunned by the people of the world due to his ability to conjure up spirits known as Origin. After his home village is robbed of their ability to produce water, he sets out to ultimately locate the person who stole it. But as with most RPGs, the narrative slowly snowballs to reveal a bigger force at play, and it soon becomes apparent that the entire kingdom is in peril. Making an appearance from the original is the fantastic tactical art system that primarily makes up the combat structure as a whole. It's still presented in a turn-based manner and provides the player with a multitude of ways in which to engage the enemy. Attacks play out with specific button combinations which can be combined to perform arts, which constitute the special abilities of each character. These arts are a true spectacle and have the ability to deal insane amounts of damage once executed correctly, so learning and unlocking as many as you can is a key strategy in overcoming the many obstacles you'll meet during the adventure. Although never reaching the highs of the original, Dual Saga is still a great RPG that well and truly deserves a spot in any fan of the genre's collection. Rogue Galaxy was released during the end of the PlayStation 2's lifecycle, just as most players were transitioning to the PlayStation 3. For this reason alone, it may have passed by many, and missing out on Rogue Galaxy would be a huge mistake. It sees you taking on the role of Jaster, a young, idealistic man who stumbles into a galactic conflict and learns that the fate of the entire galaxy is in the balance. The combat system is presented in real time and soon becomes one of the finest aspects of the experience. A range of spells and abilities are at each party member's disposal, and coupling this with the amount of weapons and equipment available, it offers many options in which to tackle each encounter. One feature that manages to stand out are the fantastic boss fights. There are some true highlights which will test even the most experienced of players. If you haven't got around to playing Rogue Galaxy, it well and truly deserves your time. In true Shin Megami Tensei fashion, Nocturne manages to portray a deep and at times quite dark narrative that is bound to captivate players right from the start. It involves a cult who are hell-bent on the rebirth of a world known as the Inception, but what makes it stand out is that throughout the adventure you'll be presented with several questions that can essentially alter the story, making it perfect for subsequent playthroughs. Gameplay-wise, you'll find yourself exploring dungeons and overcoming a range of puzzles, all the while interacting with the incredible combat system. It's turn-based in nature and sees the player given a choice of a wide range of abilities and spells, as well as several demons that will fight along your side. These demons can be forged and fused together to make even more formidable allies, which soon becomes one of the finest aspects of the game. If you're a fan of the series, this one deserves a look, and for those who have yet to try it out, it provides the perfect jumping on point for one of the finest RPG franchises to date. Radiata Stories is an RPG that largely went by unnoticed. It sees you cast as the main protagonist known as Jack, as he and a group of heroes set out on an adventure to ultimately save the kingdom. Now what makes the experience stand out is that out of the near 300 characters you'll be interacting with, a good portion of them can be recruited to your party. This opens up an immense amount of diversity in playstyles and gives the world in which the game takes place a real weight to it, as each NPC has their own backstory and personality that adds to the overall believability of the events that take place. In order to recruit them, certain conditions need to be met, such as side quests that help out the NPC with a specific issue. This all hugely plays into the real-time battling system, as each party member can be swapped out on the fly, depending on the situation at hand, and with such a range of options, there's always something for each circumstance. If you even remotely consider yourself a fan of RPGs, you owe it to yourself to pick this one up and give it a go if you haven't already. Well, that does it for today's video. Don't forget to hit subscribe to stay up to date on future videos, and as always, thanks for watching.